Hey, welcome into the pod. All thanks to Australian Made. This is a California to the G as we head towards the MCG. September 11, we are essentially 3 weeks away from the Rams and the 49ers going at it. And I'm having an absolute blast telling the story as to how this game has happened. Regular season game is going to be happening here in Melbourne. And all thanks to Australian Made. The Australian Made logo is one of Australia's most recognised country of origin symbols. That's globally. And the best thing about an international game, any sporting event, but in this case the NFL, we're able to showcase the MCG and Melbourne and Australia right across the world. And it most certainly does what the Australian Made logo does, which is it helps international buyers quickly identify authentic Australian products. And there's not many more things authentically Australian than the Melbourne Cricket Ground. And today's guest, joining me, is the CEO of the MCC, Stuart Fox. And he talks not just about this game and how it's all came together, but also the logistical part of it. They're playing an NFL game in September. They're going to turn it a game. They're going to turn the stadium around in really 24 hours to play a game of AFL finals. So many things. We had an absolute blast having a chat. He joined me in the Armchair Expert studio. So let's go. California to the G, the CEO of the MCC, Stuart Fox. G'day, buddy. How you doing?
Good, great. Getting a little nervous.
I want to ask you this off the top. Are you able to enjoy the events that come to the MCG? Is your job just so stressful and you're always worried about something?
Look, I enjoy the events.
Yes.
But you're always worried that something can go wrong. You know, when you've got a lot of people in a building.
Yeah.
You know, you've obviously got your operating team, but you've also got a building that could do anything to
Yeah.
you on any given day. So there's always a little stress in the camp. And even when I'm not in the building and there's a game on, I'm always thinking around my availability and being able to take calls if something does go wrong.
I do assume that there are many games at which you are not there, and many events that you are not there, but the NFL is one that you will be there for.
I'll be definitely, I will be in the building, and I think I'll be in the building for about 3 days straight.
So, where did this all start for you? So, you are in a situation where the MCG, and we're going to talk about the amazing amount of events and the amazing amount of people who want to have things at the MCG, concerts and sporting events. But when you first got a bit of an idea that this could be a possibility, do you remember what was going through your mind? The NFL at the MCG. Do you remember where you were?
I can't remember where I was, but my first discussion was with Visit Victoria, who are the government arm that often are attracting major global events into the country, representing the state and the government. So I do recall the very first conversation with Brendan McClements, and it was something like, hey, there could be an NFL game in Australia for points.
So how long ago was this?
This would have been, I think it's well over 2 years.
Okay.
2.5 years ago.
Okay.
And then it sort of builds from there. So it's conversation after conversation. And the first conversation's always around availability and suitability of the venue.
Yeah.
So that's where it starts.
Let's start with the availability, because the timing is tight when it comes to AFL finals. So when the availability conversation come up, how many people had to be involved? Did you have to engage the AFL by that point, or with the NFL just saying this is when we want to have it? Because it's a stressful time, I assume, for everyone who works at the MCG when an NFL game lobs in September.
Yeah, it is. The timing is extremely difficult, but availability. When someone says to you, "We can bring one of the biggest sports in the world to the MCG," you listen.
Yeah.
So your job's to try and facilitate, yet you've got obligations to the AFL that are the most important thing in the MCG's life. If you think of the two most critical pieces of content, it's football and it's cricket.
Yeah.
And they are fundamental, and we never want to compromise anything to do with those the two sports. So availability is really tricky, and particularly when you've got Visit Vic in there lobbying Sydney wanted this game. Perth wanted this game. Everyone's desperate for it to land in Victoria, and you've got to put your best foot forward. So very early on, the window was actually 6 weeks. So you're talking about a 6-week period. So you're going, oh, look, if this is in October, that's fine. And as you start,
and you had fingers crossed, I assume.
Oh, I was definitely a pro for having it in October. But that said, we've got an obligation to the state. The state government own the MCG. We are ground manager of the Melbourne Cricket Club, so we've got an obligation to the state too. And you think of the impact on the Victorian economy, the well-being of the state. You know, we need these big events, and we've got a reputation of doing it well. So you're really torn by having existing contracts in place, and then as you get closer, you get right down to the tail end where you're ready to sign contracts, and then the dates swing around a bit, and the dates fall in a really difficult week for us. And you know, we've got to get this thing away, and I'm really confident we'll get it away and do it really well.
And now, in that conversation, when do you engage the AFL in those discussions? Because was it early on to say, hey, we've got this opportunity, but it's an interesting time? Do you go a bit further down the path with the NFL and visit Victoria and then engage the AFL, or have they been involved the entire time?
No. I think when you're talking October, you're not engaging AFL, and you've probably got to roll then to engaging with cricket because you start pushing into a cricket season. Albeit there's not a lot of cricket played at the G in the early part of October because we're renovating, getting ourselves ready for games of cricket. So it's really not our job to engage the AFL. It was Visit Vic's job to engage the AFL. So they did start engaging, and I think Andrew, Dillon, and I started talking, going, "Geez, this is going to be complicated."
Yeah, and
particularly given it falls in the second week of AFL finals, and then you go, right, 2 games at risk. So how do we stage 2 games? And I just want to make it clear, when the NFL tell you they want it on Friday morning, which feels a little odd for us all to get used to, then you go 2 games. For the public's interest, you cannot turn the stadium around and have a Friday night game after a Friday morning NFL. It is physically impossible because the overlay of the NFL is huge. It's the biggest we've ever seen of any event at the G. So that overlay is going to take at least 24 hours to bump out, and the impact on turf is significant. So that's a complicated puzzle to solve.
There's 2 parts. I'll start with the first one. We caught up in San Francisco, and I remember having this conversation around this particular weekend, and it's been in my mind ever since. I've been praying for you that there's only at least 1 game, if no games. Now, there's a chance it will be 0 games, but if Hawthorn are to lose to Fremantle, there will be 1 game. How big of a relief is it? Like, how big is it of a relief that there is only going to be 1 game at the most?
Well, it certainly helps. And it helps because we want to get the ground turned back. It's going to take us a week or 2 to get that ground back to what we would expect of the MCG. So if you have 2 games at the G, so we would have to play one Saturday evening, twilight or evening, and then you'd have to play a game for the first time, finals, on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Which I know is not the preferred model for the AFL. It pushes the competing clubs into a smaller cycle of rest days, and they don't like that. So that would have been the controversial issue, not the fact that we're playing 2 games at the G.
So how many contingency plans do you have in place? Now, it hasn't happened. It's not happening, which is great for you and your crew. But like, how many contingency plans, how many conversations had you had with the AFL and the AFLPA, who are the ones who push back on the shorter turnaround, or the clubs? Like, are those already happening, or you just wait to see what happens?
I mean, they've happened, but you're in someone else's hands, right?
You are too, right?
It's the fate of the game and where it's all at, and there's a little bit of relief that it can only be 1 game, if at all. And there's certainly in our camp, people have the mood that we love to see Hawthorn win.
Yeah.
And there's not a game, but yet, the NFL are looking at playing more games in Australia and at the G. So we actually have to have a run at this and get very good at it if it was to ever be scheduled in September again.
Just on the overlay of the NFL, and you said, I understand how big it is, but like, the MCG's held the most major events for so long now. Like, were you surprised by the logistics overlay of having an NFL game?
Yeah, I've been shocked, to be honest. It's very rarely do we hand a stadium over to someone, and we call it a clean stadium.
Okay.
And clean doesn't mean it's spotless.
No.
It means you give up every single right in the place, and you hand operation over to the NFL.
So just on that, is there any negotiation, or is this, hey, this is part of it? If this happens, we get it.
No, there are some negotiations that happen before contract that are important to us. It could be as simple as needing the current caterer to stay in the building, because you can't get an external caterer in and just take over your building. So there are some complications and there are some negotiations, but rarely would we hand over full operation to the NFL. But in this case, you do, and they're highly, highly capable. Their team is elite.
Yeah.
They're used to it, and they're taking games all around the world. But it takes a while to let go of that control and give it. You're sort of handing over your keys, yet they're coming to us for all the guidance on the Australian market. What should security look like? Bag searches, all the technical stuff. They lean on you for your advice in the Australian market.
Now, I don't know if you're a control freak or not, but how have you gone with handing the keys over to the MCG?
Oh, it can be challenging, but they've been fantastic to deal with.
Good.
And the great thing is the work behind the scenes. We've had 2 years to get ready, and we're just a couple of weeks away, right?
So we're here.
Yeah, so I'm starting to build. The adrenaline's building. But those planning sessions, when the NFL have come out, they've brought out 70 people 3 times in a row. So 70 experts who know what they're doing. They deal with our team, and they come out for a week. So you think of the costs and the logistics of all of that. And they're starting to arrive now. We've had a team in town already, and I've had a team designated to it. So I changed some roles, made someone absolutely full-time. There's a champion in charge, and a couple of my staff have travelled the world with the NFL, Super Bowls, international games, just seeing how they work. And the NFL have been so accommodating in that they'll take my staff on and work full-time for the Super Bowl for a week or two in the lead-up. So that gives them great experience, great knowledge on how the NFL like to work.
Well, when it comes to the actual game, there's clearly going to be it's an NFL regular season game, so it's going to reek of NFL for people who've never been to one before. But there's going to be a real Australian flavour to it as well, with not just the game, but the periphery, extracurricular stuff that's happening in events on game day and on the course of the week. Are you confident from an MCG point of view that the world's going to get the right balance of an NFL game, which is, of course, hugely Americanised, but with the Australian culture and everything that comes with having an event at the MCG?
Oh, little doubt. I think the NFL are really ceremonial, so they love their anthem. They'll make sure ours is well represented. There'll be flags everywhere. Every time I look at the G on TV on broadcast, you get the drone shot.
Yeah.
Looking back into the city, it's something else. And you see the whole precinct, Melbourne Park. It's one of the best precincts in the world. So I've got visions that we get a beautiful blue sky, a little bit of warmth in the air would be nice, given it's a 10:35 start. So I've got a vision that's being beamed all over the world, and that's what's so appealing.
I was lucky enough to sit down with Roger Goodell in New Orleans on the day after the announcement, and he spoke glowingly about the MCG. And, it depends on who you ask, but the MCG is the crowning jewel in the conversation. The fact that there's 100,000 people that can fit in most certainly appealed to Roger Goodell and the NFL and the decision makers, of which the commissioner is such a huge part of that. How does that make you feel? Like when the MCG is a major reason as to why these events, and the NFL in this case, are keen to get to the Hello Turf. How does it make you feel for not just being the CEO, but also a Melburnian who spent so much time there?
Oh, look, extremely proud. Like when you work on a bid and you're desperate to win it, and you know a couple of other states are right in the mix, you own it, and you want the right result. But it's hard to compete with the G. I mean, you look at major stadia around the world. Most of them are the peripherals, a car park, or it's hard surface, or you're right in a city. You've got big buildings up against you. You walk out of our city and you're less than a kilometre to the G, and that sense of arrival is something special. And I think most people love that about the G. You walk into a beautiful green park. 100,000 people, great accommodation. So it's got so much to offer, and I think that's what was so appealing to them. And I know that capacity is something that's really important to them. Like, but being able to broadcast their game globally and say they've got 100,000 people in a stadium for NFL in a somewhat foreign market, in the middle of AFL finals, I think that's going to be pretty special for them. So our aim is to be the best international game of their series.
How do you find out? How did you find out? Like, is it a face-to-face conversation? Is it an email? Is it a text message? Like, there's different ways people deliver news nowadays. When did you find out that Melbourne and the MCG had got this game?
I can't remember the date, but we've known for a good part of 2 years, and we needed to know early. But again, I was part of the bid pitch, so we had Visit Victoria ourselves in so many calls and presentations in trying to sell the benefits of playing in Victoria and the G, and then Brendan McClements would have been the first person to get the call, and then it came to me. But it's just the relief to win it. You put so much work into it, and when you win it, you go, because this is a big win. Like, to have the biggest sport in the world that turns over $26 billion a year, it's just big.
Are you an NFL guy? Like, are you a fan? Were you a fan prior to this situation?
Not necessarily.
Yep.
Not a deep-hearted fan, but I love the game. I love any international sport, and I think I love some of the American sport and UK sport more than anything.
Yeah.
I still get a little confused with some of the rules, but
so do the referees at times. So don't stress too much.
Yeah. But I love it, and I love the spectacle of it, and it's going to be a little for Australians that have never experienced the game. It's different.
Yeah.
The stop and start. And the length of the game, those last 10 minutes can take 35 minutes, and that's hard to explain to people. But I think it's going to look pretty special. We've seen some mock-ups of how the ground looks and where it goes, and I think it's going to be pretty spectacular. Their presentation of the game itself and the ground is like no other sport.
The Jonas Brothers are the halftime and the entertainment. The MCG is not foreign to dealing with concerts. Taylor Swift, Ed Sheeran in recent years is a huge part of why the NFL, I think, was so in love with the MCG. To be able to see that type of thing happen on a regular basis is a big win. But when it comes to the logistics of having a concert, everyone has it and does it different ways. Were you involved in what was possible if the Jonas Brothers were the entertainment, or was it just, hey, the Jonas Brothers are doing it, and you've got to find a way to fit what they want to do?
Yeah, look, it's different if you have a Taylor Swift come to the venue because then you are heavily involved. This one's very different because this is a halftime act. Jonas Brothers come in, do their show. It's a bit of staging.
Yep.
It's some fireworks and whatever it be. So it's not. It's we secure the game. The halftime entertainment. It's very, very different to a Taylor Swift coming to the ground or even an Ed Sheeran.
Yeah.
Who played in the middle of the ground. That is logistically challenging and requires years of planning, to get it delivered in the manner in which we want.
When you have those conversations, we'll start with Taylor Swift. So she has an idea of how she wants it done, and is there just toing and froing for those couple of years you're touching on to? Because I'm assuming there are things you can't do,
absolutely,
logistically can't do.
Yeah.
So in those situations, do you just find the happy medium, or do you go if she says I want to do this, and it's something you think you can't do? Do you try and find a solution, or you just simply say,
and that's with any major event. Our attitude's always been, let's find a way to say yes rather than no. But generally, you're dealing with a middle person. Usually the concert promoter's representing Taylor, so she's not ringing you direct about her ideas, I can assure you. But when you hear of Taylor's stage setup and even Ed Sheeran's, to have it in the middle of a ground, and then you think about the turf impact, the seat kills, how many can we fit on the ground, the capacity, the logistics of people getting to amenities, food and bev, it's quite complicated. But you find a way for the right acts, and again, you start with availability and then work your way through it.
I don't need a name here, but do you ever say no? Are there requests that come through and you just say, we just can't do this?
Believe it or not, availability is our biggest challenge.
Okay.
Because as I said earlier, the greatest priority for us is AFL football and cricket. And that's because that's the heritage of our ground. And obviously AFL, you look at 50 games a year at the G, that it's effectively a lot of the economy of the stadium. And cricket is very similar, not as much content, but that's our bread and butter, and that can never be compromised. And concerts come with some real complications because every concert kills turf.
Yeah.
So then the turf replacement becomes a challenge. And what people don't understand is there's very little opening to put the concerts. So we always say sometime in October, maybe early November, but we've got cricket, and February. And you know what October's like weather-wise. It can come with a bit of risk. And February's an opportunity, but again, if there's any cricket scheduled, that's the priority. So you for any concert, you need at least six to 7 days bump in, and then 2 to 3 bump out. So it actually gobbles up a lot of time.
So Taylor and Ed were both in the early part of the year.
Yep.
Is that when they wanted it, or was that the negotiation?
No, both landed when we wanted it.
Luckily.
But what happens? Your concert promoter, if they're taking Ed around Australia. They'll generally make the G work first because of the economy of the G.
Yeah.
So if we've only got available, they'll work around that, and that's where we're very fortunate to have those two entertainers.
You got a couple of complications. Firstly, the NFL in September, but also cricket match in March next year when it comes to an anniversary. How's that all going?
Well, believe it or not, that's cricket's right.
Yeah. People forget it's the Melbourne cricket ground.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people forget the origins of the joint.
Well, people are sort of saying cricket's pushing into football. Well, in fact, it's maybe the other way around.
I agree.
And cricket have a legal right in their contract to play games right up until the third Thursday in March.
Yep.
So that they're within their right. This one's a little bit abnormal, is that we don't normally have a test match of this significance at this late in the year, or it's not late, it's March, but it's late in the cricket season. So this is a one-off special celebration to celebrate the 150th milestone. So of course we're going to do everything possible. Yeah. Now what that does is just hinder the start of the AFL season because of availability. And it's a once-off. So, I remember the AFL were quite receptive to this happening and supportive because they knew it was a one-off request. And there's times where football, AFL, will need to lean on cricket.
Does it mean we won't have a September grand final?
Oh, it's a possibility.
Yeah, okay.
And I think the AFL have sort of, I don't think they've
shied away from that.
They haven't hidden from that one. And it's not announced, but it's certainly a pushback 1 week, and it could go into the first week of October.
Well, what's your biggest headache? Like when we'll do it specifically with the NFL. What's the thing that keeps you up at night?
It's just making sure the team are a well-oiled machine and are supported. And I think if you want this high-performing culture, you've got to make sure the team's really well supported. And so for me, it's making sure all of the risk, because there is significant risk running a public building with so many people in it, making sure you do everything possible to minimise risk. So, as I said before, you worry about the asset and you worry then about external factors. We could have I don't want to alarm anyone, but imagine if there was a fire.
Absolutely.
If there was any sort of terrorism threat, that's one of the things that does keep you up at night. So it's really managing the risk of such a huge stadium, and you carry the responsibility of obviously all the patrons. So it's they're the sort of things you think about.
How many people work on a major event? Like how many people will be working on that NFL game?
Look, I'm guessing because I don't have it.
Yeah.
It's still moving.
Yeah.
But I would have thought there'll be around 6,000 to 7,000 staff in the building. And staff from every contractor, every media person. There's people coming from all over the world for this game. So you think of capacity and then you think staff as well. There's a lot of people in your building.
Did you have to do anything with the locker rooms, the change rooms?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's one of the stress points. So given the size of the team, AFL, we've got it's actually a small team with a lot of staff. NFL's a big team, 50 players plus, and then all the medicos, the coaches. So you've got a huge amount of people in a change room. So what happens is two change rooms become one.
Okay, so
the AFL's double change rooms.
Yep.
They become one for the NFL. So we use the Shane Warne side.
So they'll be on different sides of the stadium.
Total opposite sides
Yeah.
because they're a huge outfit. And then you just think of their lockers, and they prepare for the game very differently. They don't necessarily warm up in the change rooms as much like AFL
Yeah,
players.
they're out there.
Their lockers are double the size because the men are like huge.
Big boys.
And they sort of sit in their lockers.
Yeah.
And so everything's different. So that comes with complication because the next day, within 24 hours, the AFL lockers have to be sitting there and presented in exactly the same way we would normally present. So that's why our workforce that's going to work through the night on the Friday evening, if we've got a game on, there is a lot of pressure in the camp to make sure we are looking cherry ripe for the next day.
Are all these things in the pitch, or are these things that wash out on the back of it when you've got it?
Once you've got it, you start working through the logistics a little bit more.
Because you have full belief that you're able to do whatever needs to be done, right?
Well, we do because the proof's in the pudding.
Yeah.
Like we've had State of Origin, Bledisloe Cups. We've had plenty of World Soccer at the venue where an AFL game is on the next day. This one's a little more different because your biggest stress point is actually the turnaround with turf. So you've got one of the things the NFL do exceptionally well is apply a hell of a lot of paint on the ground. And people who are watching the game on TV or live will see how well the ground's presented. So when they finish, the 2 touchdown zones, the big NFL logo, that doesn't come off at all. It doesn't come off easily.
Yeah.
So there's turf replacement during the middle of the night. They'll be washing out lines and putting more green paint over. So one of the things I am putting out there that the G just won't present the same way the next day. We're going to have some residue. But it will be safe. There'll be some faint line markings. It won't look as pristine, as beautiful as the G is presented every week as it normally would be.
But people who complain about that are just being picky, and
people will find a way.
That's society, unfortunately, and in particular in the sporting world, where if their team loses, that means there's a little bit extra paint on the half-forward flank across their team.
Anything that happens.
But you've had that before. You had a State of Origin game this year, and if you look closely enough on the weekend's game after it, there's a little bit there when it comes to the NRL as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And what I've learned is that anything that happens at the G is just a public issue, public debate. Yet I see other grounds presented terribly, but anything with ours becomes an issue. Last weekend we had a sewage pipe break during the game, and I'm at home watching it on the broadcast getting announced, and I'm going, right, how does that work? So anything we do is in the public eye, and the expectation on us is high.
You love your job?
Absolutely.
Like you were in clubland prior to this, and there's obviously a huge difference. When you work in a club that's historically a dynasty when you're winning premierships at Hawthorn, and then you move to this. Was this always something that you were aiming for, or just sort of popped up and you put your hand up, or like your career evolution? Because you've done an amazing job in this particular role, but like, is this something that you'd always sort of been like, that's where I want to sort of end up?
Oh, I didn't plan for it this way. And I was at Hawthorn obviously before it, and had signed a tenure that took me a fair way out.
They haven't won a premiership since you left, mate. I don't know if you're aware of that.
But this popped up. This popped up inconveniently after I signed a contract with Hawthorn. But I love my job, and it's such a privilege. And there's never a day where you're not challenged or you're thinking about something very, very different. So, I did run a stadium when I was young down at Geelong. So that sort of gave me a great sort of experience to run a bigger stadium. And I just love it. I love the fact that we're now dealing with a world sport. We're dealing with concerts. We've got great relationships with the AFL and cricket. And I think generally we do it pretty well, and we pride ourselves on presenting that ground well every week.
We had Steve Demopoulos on here a couple of weeks ago, and he spoke about the fact that has always been keen to try and get the Matildas to play at the MCG. He's pretty big on that.
He's told me that plenty of times.
He mentioned that. Is there an event that you would love to see at the MCG? Maybe you've swung and missed in the past. Maybe there's one that is a pipe dream. Is there something that comes to mind that you'd love to see at the MCG?
I'm with him on the women's soccer team. Women's sport, women haven't had the same opportunity to play on the MCG as men. So I'd love to see females getting a much better opportunity at it. That said, it comes with complications. So just having a soccer match in the middle of a cricket season is close to impossible. And trying to explain that to people, you can't play soccer over a cricket pitch. And the cricket pitches take about 3 to 4 days to come out, and then we have to get new turf in. So it's really complicated. But I think the opportunity to have world sport, a global leader in world sport in our building, is something else. So you just ponder whether, have soccer, have they missed a trick here with going international 4 points? Everyone's scared of flight times and things like that, but it's not that bad.
No, and I said this, we were lucky enough to, in New Orleans, we had Puka Nakura on, we've had Kyron Williams on, a couple of the Rams players. They're also on a chartered flight. They've got their own chefs. So, I mean, it's not as comfortable as sleeping in your own bed or in a hotel next to the SoFi Stadium and playing on a Sunday afternoon. I get that, but it's not exactly the hardest thing to do to get on a chartered flight and end up in Melbourne.
No, and they're well looked after. But I think, you look at any sport, they look after the players, and I get it. But, I think the Rams are in 5 or 6 days early.
Yeah.
So they'll acclimatise. I think the 49ers are in really close to the game. So there's 2 different strategies playing out here, and they've obviously got to get back to their regular season.
You get linked to every time there's a high-profile job. You seem to get linked to it nowadays. You're never thinking about going somewhere else.
No, I'm not.
Nah, good.
As I said to you, I love this job, and how can you?
Is that humbling though? And I think if you're running the G, like it's at the top level job, but when you are linked to these jobs, is it humbling, and is it a little pat on the back to the great job you are doing, because you don't get linked to these jobs if you're struggling in your role?
Of course, it's humbling, but sometimes it can be a distraction and an inconvenience to have your name out there. So, but I'm so committed to it. It becomes part of your life, and as I said, being part of one of the best stadiums in the world, and now we're working on redevelopments into the future. There's so much on your plate. You go, how could you leave it? And you become very passionate about it. And all our staff, we've got 180 permanent staff, and when we do our staff engagement, the one thing is pride of where you work. So being able to, it's the old barbecue test. When you're at a barbie and people say, "What do you do?" I work at the MCG. Staff are pretty proud of that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And
they should be.
And the conversation then comes to the MCG. Look, there is a great sense of pride in what we do.
I don't know if there's many bathrooms in the world that allows you to go to the bathroom and also not miss a second of the action. There's so many unique things about the MCG, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. And, the scale's one thing, but the heritage too, I think, is really important. The light towers in the sky, as I said, being in a green park, close to city restaurants. So it is a pretty special place.
I know it's been 70 years, but does the fact that it held the Olympic Games come up in conversation? Well, maybe the Com Games in 2006, but the Olympic Games, is that part of the narrative when you're talking? I know a long time ago.
Every time.
Yeah, every time?
Every time. If you're pitching for something big, you start with Olympics.
Yeah.
You go Com Games. Taylor Swift and Ed Sheeran are always part of the mix. And then when you tell people you're putting 50 games of AFL on and you do 3 in one weekend, they don't quite fathom that you can put 300,000 or 400,000 people through your stadium in a weekend. So that's where it's just so incredible. But pitching, I think, the iconic nature of the stadium and all those events help with any pitch.
It's not easy, but it's easier, I assume, when you have the Olympic Games and then Taylor Swift and Ed Sheeran and the Commonwealth Games aren't necessarily a major all-inclusive international sporting event, but they were huge in 2006, and the way that the MCG is able to transform almost it feels like a weekly basis, and in this case we might be in a 24-hour basis, but it gives you so much scope to be able to do different things. That you are right, and I'm lucky enough to travel the world and go to sporting events. We sometimes take it for granted. Maybe not you, because you are in the thick of it, but as a fan, as a Melburnian who goes to so many events at the MCG, sometimes we do just take it for granted rather than logically think about how incredible the joint is.
Yeah, it is, and you look at the economic values that brings to our state, but also the status. it's incredible when I think this NFL game has improved the sort of status of the G globally, because whenever I talk to anyone from the UK or India, if you mention the MCG, they go crazy. In the US, people would often go to me, "Well, what's the MCG?" But I think when you put Taylor and Ed Sheeran on, that goes global. Now the NFL, we're being noticed in the American market, which we weren't known for. So I think getting presenting the MCG on a global stage is becoming the normal now.
Before I finish up, mate, and I appreciate your time, I do want to ask you, there's always a lot of rumours and innuendo and whispers, right? I want to know about Snoop Dogg. How was he to deal with when he rolled in for a grand final?
He presented a couple of challenges.
Did he?
But I think one of the things the AFL have
Was
done,
there any truth to the green room conversation that got around?
Jeez. Well, I think there could have been a bit of truth,
Okay.
but I didn't want to see it. All right,
Fair enough.
I wasn't part of it.
That's yeah. Is that the cool part of the job? Obviously you're in a situation where you've got to make sure it all runs well, but Snoop Dogg, Taylor Swift, Ed Sheeran, NFL players, Matthew Stafford, the best players we've got here in Australia. We're the absolute top of whatever industry they're involved in. Is that the cool part of what you get to do?
Well, there's a cool part of every job, and there's some challenging parts as well. But I think that's why we love where we work, is because it's like having your wedding every weekend. You're going to your wedding, we're putting it on, we've got to get it right. It's just so good. And, the next 5 weeks, you look at the G, we'll probably have 4 or 5 games of AFL and an NFL game.
You've essentially got 2 AFL grand finals in 3 weeks.
Correct.
Really. And I mean, I know prelims get monster crowds,
Yep.
but it's not just about the actual people who walk into the stadium. It's the fanfare around it. And the NFL have done a really good job of continually building, and this will build in years to come, but the whole week has a grand final for our local product, a grand final feel about it. And it's not easy to do. It's not easy to do, is it?
No, and we're going to be challenged and tested, and that's sort of what gets us up out of bed.
Well, I'm happy for you because I've been thinking about it ever since the game date was announced. I was like, this is going to be a really interesting time. I know we had that short convo in San Fran around it, but the good news is it's going to be a smidge bit easier for you, man. I appreciate you coming in. We can't wait to get there on September 11, and I hope it's not an incredibly stressful day and you can enjoy the game in some way.
No, thanks for having me on, Cam.
Thanks, mate.